So I'm going to show you words that start with the letter Kaf as the answer to the question of who is you, who is the you that Yahweh was referring to. Now, if the letter Kaf is a prefix, then it's not part of the word. As a prefix, it's a supplemental grammatical fragment, and then the word itself is simply the word itself. And in Hebrew, they say that all the words are basically three-letter, what you might call a verb root. And we mentioned once before that Dieter here has been studying the parsing, right? And the parsing is how you take a three-letter word as a root and break it up into all its different grammatical aspects. One of the things that I had said before was that I noticed that you could stick yods and vavs in between the letters, and they're almost functioning as wildcards. Sometimes they change the word, but not really. They add a regard of the word. And I can show you a little bit of that here. And if you study the dictionary, you'll find for yourself where that's the case. And again, it's a matter of study by use. It's not a matter of learn a bunch of rules and then you'll know how the words work. You start reading the scripture and you'll see how they work. Now, before I get into this, I'm going to detour for a moment and I'm going to talk to you about this paper that we handed out. So, what Yahweh said, and this is actually, I don't know if you want to go grab it, the page that we printed up with the black emblem where it says the oath of the Shem Zakar. Yahweh gave a command to his people, to Moshe, to Aharon. It's on this chart, which Jamie's going to get. And he says, you will write all these words well clarified. You will write all these words well clarified. The reason for this paper here that we haven't gone into in great detail, thank you, Jamie. This is the words right down here. Well clarified, and I have underneath in parentheses, though unclerical. Because if you look at the dictionary under the word clerical or cleric, it's where we get the word clergy and clerk, and it has to do with those who have been given the duty of guarding the ecclesiastical interpretation of the true meaning of the scriptures. In other words, they're the knights. The word is also esquire, which are the knights of the king, or the esquires were actually the shield bearers of the knights, who were the military arm of the king, or the authority to see to it that his words ruled. So you've got the clerks, the clergy, the clerics, those who know how to read and write, who kept it away from the laity, which are us peasants who don't know how to read and write. The unclerical. So the clergy has been given the responsibility to give us the interpretation and maintain that order. And I would put to you that any clergyman who is outraged that the people in the pews want to learn Hebrew is trying to hide something. I'm suggesting that. I don't know the individual. I can't guess what's on his mind, but that's what my suspicious mind thinks. Is that why don't they want us to know? It makes me think of the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Why? That makes me want to look. I just told you not to pay any attention. Why? It's an oxymoron, right? They might lose their authority. That's right. You see, the pen is mightier than the sword. Learn how to read. English, it's been changed. Hebrew's been changed. We're going back to the original, to Yahweh's personal utterance. This is to learn how to read so that nobody can bamboozle you. Now, you could bamboozle yourself if you don't know how to read properly. So here's the commandment instruction of Deuteronomy 27, verse 8. Ki, or call, kaf lamed, all, ha-devarim, all the words, bar ha-itov. Bet aleph resh has to do with to make something pure and clean and refined, well done. The purpose of this chart, there's a lot of Hebrew words written in Paleo. This will do you no good if you don't recognize the letters. But the purpose of this chart is in telling you what this symbol means, is to say when you learn these letters, it'll give you something to read. If you teach somebody to read and they got nothing to read, it'll do them no good. I've now handed out the 10 Commandments in Paleo. You now have something to read. Without this, you've got nothing. I've talked to a few people who said they don't even have a Tanakh. Not to pick on anybody there, but the point is, the Tanakh is written in modern Hebrew. It's like, well, gee, I didn't have a Tanakh for a long time, and I was trying to figure out how to write the word Elohim. Elohim. Let's see that. Aleph, Lamed, Vav, that's Elo. No, in the scriptures, there's no Vav. Well, if you read in the dictionary, one way that you can spell it is Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Hey, Yod, Mem. But I didn't have a copy of the scriptures. I didn't realize that nowhere in the Bible is the word Elohim spelled with a Vav. It's an inferred vowel. So I had made this banner that I had in my house with the names of Yahweh, and I had to go back and change it because the letter Vav doesn't exist in the word Elohim as it's used in Scripture. Well, you see, if you don't have a Tanakh, if you don't know how to read, and if nobody gives you the words, you can't read. You have to learn the letters, learn the words, learn how to read. The purpose of the dictionary here, this rare dictionary again, is that this wonderful tool showing you what the words mean. We'll go over that a little bit. But the thing is, it's not in Paleo. It doesn't exist in Paleo. And I saw a copy that the Karaites had published a few years ago of Paleo letters, but they jammed the letters together because they were computer generated, and you couldn't read them if you wanted to. Wrote these by hand. Separated the letters. The words on this shirt are exactly the same as these letters. It's the 10 Commandments. Exodus 20. That's the first 2 pages is the 10 Commandments. And anything that belongs to your neighbor is the last word. I am Yahweh your Elohim, which is the first word. The 3rd page says, the entire people saw the thunder and the flames, the sound of the shofar and the smoking mountain. So the first line in blue says that. And then it says, do not fear. That's the word al-tira, that's this word here. Do not fear, so that in order to elevate you, Yahweh has come, so that the awe of him shall be upon your faces, so you do not sin. Who is the you that he's referring to? That's why we're studying these words. And this word here, al-tira, says do not fear, which is the most often repeated commandment in the scriptures. In order to elevate who? You. Who's the word you? Well, if you figure this out here, it's spelled Aleph Tav, Kaf Mem. Well, Kaf Mem, as a plural, is translated as you all. The letter Kaf as a suffix at the end of the word means you. Kaf Mem, the Mem is plural because the Mem has to do with Mem multiplication, like planting and bringing forth a harvest. So Tav Mem, Kaf Mem, or Lamed Mem all mean unto you all, or them, or you all. It's the plural at the end of the word. So Aleph Tav, Kaf Mem is the word you all. Who is you? You all that will regard the Aleph Tav that is inscribed and handed to you, the lines of instruction. Remember, the letter Kaf is these lines of instruction. So I maintain what I found in this pattern, according to the Mishkan pattern, is that the letter Kaf and Lamed line up with the altar of sacrifice right inside the gate of the Mishkan. So you go back to this picture here on the chart, the Kaf and the Lamed line up with the purple row right down the middle. Purple, the reason these letters are in purple is because purple indicates royal decrees. These are the voice of the expressions of the king of the eternal universe, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh Elohim Zavot, Yahweh the master of the hosts of the eternal dimension. His words. Which authority are we going to yield to? Which authority are we going to align with? As we talked about in the first section, I would maintain that every denomination, every church, every synagogue, every religion has the privilege, has the right to have their own rules and their own leaders, their own doctrines, and they can believe anything they choose. You can believe anything you want. As for me and my house, I will determine what the words of Yod-He-Vav-He, written in Paleo-Hebrew, mean to say, and I will align myself with those words. That's what this is about. I'm not going to step on anybody else's toes, and I'm not going to argue their doctrines with them. But I will converse with other people with a similar heart as we try to scrutinize what these words mean to say. But it's not a matter of clobbering and fighting. It's a matter of saying, do you have a heart to know what these words mean to say? I'm projecting you to what I have found, and if somebody else wants to disagree or discuss or have a different opinion, I'm happy to hear about it. I'm happy to discuss it. I'm happy to try to work through, to walk through. As a matter of fact, the commandment was, you will talk of these things. When you rise up, when you lie down, when you sit in your house, when you walk on the way, you will teach these things diligently to your children and write them on the doorposts of your gates and upon the doorposts of your house. You will have them as frontlets between your eyes and on your hands. What does all that mean? That means think about it and talk about it. Discuss it amongst yourselves. By discussing it amongst ourselves, we're not arguing, though it might get heated, though we might have different perspectives, but we're obeying the commandments by discussing it. If you don't know what these words mean, you can't discuss it. You can sit here and listen, but you can't discuss. Now, if I say something that all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, that makes me think of another doctrine that I grew up believing. Now we can discuss that doctrine, perhaps, in light of what these words say, but you're going to have to understand these words before you can, in your own mind and in your own heart, align to weigh your favorite doctrine with your favorite preacher, with your favorite verse in the Scripture written in Paleo-Hebrew. And when I say Paleo-Hebrew as opposed to modern Hebrew, it's because I'm not even trying to take anything away from those who find such great regard for the modern Hebrew. After all, if it truly was Daniel who was told by the angel to hide the words and seal the book, and as I believe, he did it by changing it from the Paleo-Hebrew to the modern Hebrew. It was at the command of the Almighty through the angel Gabriel, and it was with the wisdom imparted to him and the great esoteric genius to pull it off, where every letter is such an incredible statement and study for these last 2,500 years. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the modern Hebrew. I'm just saying, this has nothing to do with rabbinical Judaism or Christianity or Christian Orthodoxy or Protestant or Catholic or anything else. It's the ancient Phoenician-style letters of the Paleo-Hebrew that I believe came right out of the mouth and literally the finger of Yod-He-Vav-He. The word, by the way, for finger, if you look it up, where it says he wrote with his own finger on the tables of stone, it's the same word for painting colors. So to look at these letters as colors is literally what the word for the finger of Elohim means. And so as I've said before, if you say, well, what if Yahweh had 22 fingers? Of course, he gave us 10 to make a reference as a minion, but nevertheless, if he had 22 letters, 22 fingers, and he colored them different colors, and he goes like this, it's like he's spelling words. We're seeing his fingers. We're seeing his, and as we discussed before, as a concept, your hand is an expression, an outward expression of your inner consciousness. Stan Tenen with the Miru organization, whose name is down here at the bottom, did a whole study on that, and not to go there, but it's just to say that the human body was designed that the hand is the outward expression of the inner thought. And there's two letters which are hands. It's the Yod and the Kaf. And as a concept, the two letters that are the 11 and the 12 that are right in the middle of the alphabet happen to be the Kaf and the Lamed. There's 22 letters, the numbers 11 and 12. We'll get to this at another week. But the menorah, if you look at closely, the way it was designed, it said it has 6 branches, and then there's one in the middle, and that each of the branches should have 3 cups, but 4 cups in the middle. Cup for what? Like a blossom of a flower. Well, if the cup held oil and it had a wick in it, then there was actually 3 times 6 is 18 plus 4 is 22. There was 22 wicks with lights in the menorah on 7 branches. 22 lights, not 7. I've only ever seen menorahs with 7 lights. Most of the time they're not even lit. But it sounds like there was actually 22 lights on the menorah, in which case you could say, well, that's like the 22 letters. Could it be that the 22 letters of the alphabet is, if you understand them, is what lit, metaphorically, the kadosh place? Well, if you think about it in that sense, then within the Mishkan pattern itself, it's given a certain validity to the concept of the 22 what's? The 22 what's? Well, there's 22 letters, there's 22 chromosomes, there's 22 amino acids. Yahweh chose this number of 22 to provide the basic structure. And if you look at the letter Kaf, it's almost like a rib cage, which is the basic structure, or like a ship hull, a basic framework. If you build like these timbers up here in this roof, if you do timber framing, you've got the main support and you've got these ribs coming out. It's the same kind of pictures in the letter Kaf. It's this skeleton thing. So what I'm suggesting is that within the paleo, within the shape of the letter, as well as the words that are spelled with the letter, there's basic ideas which cannot be separated from what the letter is trying to say. And then when you take what it's trying to say and you incorporate it with other letters, you'll find what the other words mean. So part of this, to go back here and give you certain words, I've also, by the use of the dictionary, told you what these words mean. Achad, one statement. Chetem, sitar, Ayin Tav Hey, he enveloped himself, which is like this, like the Vav being enveloped in the fires of the 2 houses, Israel and Yehuda. These things are encrypted all through here. Ot Hashem Zakar, the symbolic oath of the name. Ot, oath, Hashem, the name. Zakar is the remembrance, but the oath has to do with this. This is also the letters of the alphabet. If you look at these words, of course, in order to use the dictionary, you got to take the paleo and swap it back into the modern flame letters so you can read the dictionary. So this is a tool as a part of an exercise for you to start applying your mind to, and it's going to take some deep study, some deep thinking, some profoundly deep thinking. Remember that word. We're going to get to it by the end of this second session here. So the purpose of this chart is to give you something to read and something to study. It's an exercise thing, though it looks like a picture that's no exercise at all, but to try to figure it out, there's the exercise. On this chart, there's a whole bunch of things embedded with various paleo letters, mostly down here. Up here, there's only a few. You have to try to figure out what it is, and where I've mentioned different Bible verses, it's like, look at the Bible verse, figure out what it has to do with the letter, figure out what it has to do with the word, and why did I put it there? And then you'll try to compare these things, and in the exercise, you are weighing, which is the word shekel. Shekel is a type of coin that was used to weigh its balance. If you have a certain spice or an herb that's worth so many shekels per ounce, then how many shekels of silver per ounce? And now you're weighing and you're measuring your shekel-ing. That's Heblish, a blend of Hebrew and English, right? So your sefer-ing or shekel-ing, we're going to find these words in Isaiah, which we'll get to. So the purpose of this, altira, for in order to elevate you. Now wait a minute. Isn't there some doctrines that say that the reason he gave us the law was to prove that we couldn't, and to prove what a miserable mess we were in, that we were never going to get out of, so fortunately he gave us a new covenant later which absolved us of the law? But this says he gave it to you, Aleph Tav Kaf Mem, you all who would regard the gift, the covering of the structure of the Aleph Tav revealed to you, in order to elevate you? To elevate you? Which means if we don't know what these words are and we don't keep these words, we are unelevated, which means we are what? Stepped on and ground into the ground by the other ones who would take over the jurisdiction of trotting us down, which is where you get the word Lord. The Lamed is the authority to Resh Dalet, is where we get the road. Red, Lamed, Vav, Resh Dalet is the phonetic of Lord, which is the authority that now can stomp you and grind you and flatten you out. And that's another verse in Isaiah which talks about exactly that concept. So to not use the word Lord on purpose is not to disparage those who the Lord is dear to them, but it's to go back and to align our thoughts and our hearts with the revelation of the truth that's embedded in Hebrew. That's why we're doing this. So that the In order to elevate you, Yahweh has come, so, see, there's a reason, so that the awe of him shall be upon your faces, so that you shall not sin. And then he says in verse 21, which is after here, down here in the red, wherever I permit my Shem, my name, to be remembered or re-mentioned, that's the word Zakir. There's a yod there, and this other word Zakar over here has a vav in it, and here it has on this other paper just simply Zion Kaf Resh, which is the word to remember or memorial. Again, you add the yod and the vav in a different aspect, but it's basically to remember. Wherever I permit, this is what the Yahweh says. Well, then you say, well, where does that word permit? That's another matter, but think of this in English. Wherever I permit my Shem, that's, remember, name, fame, noun, reputation, occupation, stuff he's concerned with, which is everything in the alphabet, which is everything about the Sabbath day, which is everything about the Mashiach, which is everything about this alphabet, which is everything about the Moedim, the festivals. Wherever I permit my Shem to be remembered. You see, it hasn't been remembered for thousands of years, but we are here tonight because we are in the process of remembering. I shall come to you and bless you. That's what these words say right here. Wherever I permit to be remembered at Aleph Tav Shemi, my name, Aleph Bet Vav Aleph, I will come. See, Aleph in the prefix means I will. Bo, Avo, Aleph Lamed Yod Kaf, to you. Aleph Lamed, the authority, my El, my power and strength, Kaf, to you. To who? I want to be one of those yous there. Who is you? I want to be that you. I will come to you, Ivarek, there's the word Baruch, Bet Resh Kaf, Tav Yod Kaf. Tav, we'll get to later, it's the last letter. I found by use in the Tanakh that the Tav can either be at the beginning of the word or at the end, and translators don't seem to know whether it's past tense or future tense, because they've put both of them in both places, so they don't even know. What I'm telling you is we can't trust the translators because I've found discrepancies all over the place in the different translations. So it's a sense of future or past, and then Yod means my, but Tav Yod can also mean my covenant. I will bless you with my covenant, or as the expression of my covenant, I will Bet Resh, and the word Bet Resh is pure and clean. I will offer you purity and cleanliness according to the terms of my covenant to Kaf, the last letter, to you, as your gift, as your covering. That's what this is all about. And if you want to be the receiver of that, choose to be the Kaf that's mentioned in this alphabet when he says, this is what I'm doing. Remember, the minion of Aleph through Yod means I will, my. But now the next letter, Kaf, now this is for you to regard. Remember, the minion of the letters, Aleph as a prefix meaning I will, Yod as the last letter of the suffix means my. So Yahweh is basically saying through the 10 letters of Aleph through Yod, this is my part of the bargain. Then the letter Kaf says, like what? Like the words of instruction say? Because see, the mystery of the meaning of the letter is embedded in the letter, right? So now this is what you are supposed to be like. The letter Kaf is a prefix and a suffix. This is what you're supposed to be like. And this is my gift of the covering to you, that if you're like this, you get the blessing. You get to be the one who's in my kingdom, in my house, in my Mishkan, that I give all this for. Unto eternity, unto the Leolam Va'ed. So let's look at some of the words that are spelled with the letter Kaf. And again, this is to make you familiar with the letter Kaf and to see that the message in these simple letter words, which are two-letter words, there's a message just because there's a Kaf in the message. So let's see if we can get the theme of these words which have the letter Kaf. So if you start off with Kaf Vav Lamed, and I don't see where I wrote that down here. Well, anyway, we'll come back to that. Kaf Mem, we also said, was you all. So if you go to Kaf Yod, is a burning or a branding. Like you come into the kingdom, and the first thing that happens once you come in through the Het Tet Yod, which is the fence, is the altar of sacrifice, where there was a fire. Like imagine a poker where you walk in and you get branded. He claims you as his once you come in and agree to abide by these terms. And if you see this branding iron, And you step inside the kingdom and say, oh, we get to be saved. We're going to the kingdom of heaven, and here we go. Everybody's invited right in. You step in, and you see this branding iron, and he's got it heating up on the altar of sacrifice with this fire. And he says, all right, bend over. You're going to get branded. And you go, oh, hey, just a minute. We're going to have a little bit of an argument about the terms of this being part of this kingdom. Just hold on with that branding iron. It's like, I believe that what this pattern shows is that we can all stand here inside the fence. We want to come into the kingdom. It's symbolized by the Zion, the seventh day, the Sabbath day, the Lord of the Sabbath, outside. Yeshua on the cross outside, who says, all ye who would enter, come. It's a free gift to enter in. If you would choose to enter the kingdom of light instead of darkness, come on in. So we come running in, and all of a sudden, whoa, there's this altar of sacrifice right inside the gate with a branding iron, and he says, you're going to have to conform to these standards. And we go, oh, wait, just a minute. I thought coming in was a free gift. Well, it certainly is. Well, now you got to learn something. You see, as we mentioned last week with the Tet, you can't learn about the Sabbath day outside. You can just simply see those who regard the Sabbath day. So the Sabbath day, the letter Zion, the seventh letter, the weapon, this stark thing like the glorious tree full of fruit, is outside proclaiming that the king of this kingdom is the one who claimed the Sabbath day as his own because he created the world in 6 days and rested the seventh. It's the sign, it's the noon psalmic, it's the great thing. Hey, look who this is all about. Hey, let's come charging in. So we come into the Mishkan because he said we could freely enter because Yeshua died on the cross. And then we say, oh, but now we got to get branded. Now we got to learn something. Now we got to do something. Now we got to regard something. Wait just a minute. And I'm convinced, because of the pattern, that you can stand there the rest of your life, debating and squabbling and bickering whether or not you want to conform to the standards of the Kof. And yet never progress, but yet you're still in the door. Does that mean you're a believer? Does that mean you're saved? Does that mean you're, put your favorite label? I don't know what it means. I just see that learning instruction is inside the kingdom. And it's right inside is what it says. It's not, you come in and sit around and set up a folding chair and a lazy boy and enjoy being in the kingdom. When they brought their sacrifices, it was right inside the door. First order of business. You bring your sacrifice, the priest chopped up the sacrifice, put it on the altar. And so what does this got to do with the letter Kof? Because the letter Kof is also drawn like a shower grate, a floor drain. It's a barbecue grill. You see the letter Kof? It's a barbecue grill. You chop up your sacrifice, some stuff stays on top, other stuff falls through. He said the blood and the fat are his. Do not eat it. That's an instruction. And what happens when you take a piece of meat and you put it on the barbecue grill? Well, when you slaughter it, he says, pour the blood into the earth and put the fat, if any fat that's left that you didn't clean off, drips through. Don't eat the fat. The Kof is a filter. The word for kidney starts with the letter Kof. It's Kof, Lamed, Yod, Hey. Kidney. The heart is a pump. It's spelled Lamed Bet. Kof and Lamed are a filter, a pump. Soon as you come into the kingdom, it's a circulatory system. You learn the ways of the kingdom by the filter and the pump. The pump, the Lamed, the word Lamed means teach and learn. It's a hook and it's a shepherd's staff with a pokey end and a curved end. So you can grab the pull and you can push. You can push and pull. That's the Lamed, like the pump, the provoke and to incline. But the Kof is a filter. You learn the ways of the kingdom once you come in. You can't learn the ways of the kingdom outside because you're in the darkness. You don't know. He didn't expect you to conform to a set of rules on the outside so that you can merit coming in. He put Yeshua on the cross outside to pay for your waywardness of why you were kicked out at the beginning, at least from our ancestors, so that we could come back to the kingdom and learn his ways. And what are his ways? Well, his ways are everything that have to do with the Kof, the lines of instruction, like these words, the lines of instruction. So if you say, well, what are these concepts that are the Kof concepts? You could say, can you do these things? We were told from a Christian doctrinal perspective that you can't do these things. Can you do what he said to do? I'm speaking Hebrew. Can, well, that's Kof Noon. Here, Kof Noon, Vav Tav, Kof Vav Noon, Kof Noon, Kof Vav Noon Tav, Kof Vav Noon Noon, Kof Noon Hey. These are all words related to Kof Noon. What is Kof Noon? How do you spell Kof Noon? How do you say it? Can or kan. And what does it mean? It means yes! It means truly, certainly. It's a pedestal, it's a foundation. I remember the BC comics made by John Hart. There's these cavemen, and the guy would occasionally step up on a platform, and the platform said truth. And he'd speak if he had something to say to his fellows. That's the word can. It's a pedestal, and it means truth. You see that we've got these embedded concepts of Hebrew, and we don't even know it. The truth is this pedestal which gives you the capability to be able to do something. Yes, you can. That's Hebrew for saying yes, yes. Can. In French, that's a lewd dance, but the can literally meant yes, yes. Well, it's going somewhere else. But these other languages are all embedded in. The point is, Kaf, Vav, Nun, that one's not written up here, means direction. Why should the Kaf and the Nun have to do with the direction? Because the Kaf is the rib cage, and the Nun is the life imparted. And it's like, how do you impart life to a rib cage? Well, gee, that makes me sever the dots going back to Ezekiel 37. Can these bones live? Certainly they can. He said to Ezekiel, speak to these bones and prophesy, prophetically tell them to live. This, studying the alphabet, is prophetically telling ourselves and our others who want to live how we can live. Go back to the structure of the instructions. Instructions is structure. You see the same word? It goes back to the Kaf. Kaf Vav Nun is a direction. Kaf Vav Zayin literally means a liquid measure. Kaf Vav Nun, remember the cone heads on Saturday Night Live? This is the word cone. Set up, established, firm, to exist right, correct, constituted, directed, prepared himself, made ready, provided, furnished, arranged, ordered, to straighten, to determine exactly, to make, to correspond, tune a musical instrument. You see, when you come into the kingdom, it's all about kaf nooning according to Yahweh's standards. The plumb line, the correct frequency, the correct order, the correct perspective. Kaf Vav Nun Hey is intention, attention, devotion, meaning. It's a rack to set up according to the categorized, established order. It's to adjust, attune, a regulator. You know when you got a stereo and you had a tuner? That's what this word is. Kaf Vav Nun Nun. It also is the same word of Kaf Vav Nun Tav, is to aim a military weapon, like a cannon. That's Kaf Nun Nun, cannon, which is this piece of armament that you aim, that you register, that you determine the elevation so that you can accomplish something. Because Yahweh said, in order to elevate you, He gave you these words. If you figure out what these words mean, it's like aiming a cannon. It's like setting your tuner. It's like tuning a harp. The word for harp is koner. And I remember as a kid that koner was the name of a harmonica or a harp. It's literally the word for harp, which is a stringed instrument with lines that are tuned. The lines of the commandments are the tuning of the kingdom of Yahweh. And for us to say it just doesn't matter puts us out of tune and out of sync with Him. He gave us these lines of instruction so that as soon as we stepped into the kingdom, we can get with the program. And if we want to spend the rest of our life arguing with Him, whether we have to or should want to, or whether they're still valid, or whether they're useful, whether it'll do us any good, whether He really meant what He said, you can stand there and squabble all you want. But there's stories in the Old Testament about how the Israelites were given the promised land, and they squabbled and they argued and said He didn't believe them. And He says, okay, fine. You can have whatever you say. If you say, oh, Yahweh brought us here in order to kill us in the desert, guess what? That's going to be your reality. You're going to be killed in the desert by Yahweh. You can have whatever you say. He said, I told you can come into the land and I will dispossess your enemies and I will just give it to you. Now that's my word and you can believe it, and if you believe it, I'll give it to you. If you don't believe it, you can die out here in the desert, take your pick. And I'm convinced that we can come into the kingdom, stand there, argue, not know how to read, believe whoever the clerics are that tell us what they think it says, or we can sit there and say, I'm going to figure out what it means. The word Kaf Vav Nun happens to also be a heathen sacrificial cake, like hot crossed buns, that were offered to Tammuz and the Queen of Heaven. Now, interesting that the same word, kaf vav nun, that can mean, boy, this is like the harp of the strings to praise Yahweh, and it means, yes, I can do it. He says it's the same word used for the heathen cake offered to the Queen of Heaven that Yahweh hates, and says, if you do that, you're out. Remember the tet? The armed guard inside that says, if you do certain things, he's going to kick you out? And Yeshua said something about erasing names out of the book of life. These are serious matters. Kaf vav resh is where we get the word core. It means core, and it literally means round, or a melting pot, or a furnace, or somebody who's doing core drilling is like cutting a hole in concrete. It's a Hebrew word. Ketubah, kaf vav tav bet. Ketub is the writing. It's like a prenuptial agreement or a betrothal. These words are the ketubah of Yahweh to his bride. So if somebody wants to be the bride of Christ, and if the word Christ in Greek happens to mean like an avatar or a special person, or, it doesn't, we say, well, there's one Christ, and that was Jesus, and he was this one particular guy, but the word Christ is a little bit more generic than that. But the thing is, if somebody wants to be the bride of Christ, and if their Christ has a different ketubah, I can't tell them that they're wrong. I can't argue with them. All I can say is, these words are Yahweh's ketubah. And I choose to be the kaf of Yahweh and take part with his ketubah and get the perks of all the benefits of Yahweh's ketubah. Read the book of Deuteronomy. Read Isaiah, I believe it's in chapter 30 and 31, which I was going to go there, but I don't know if we'll get there tonight. It tells you the perks and the benefits of being of Yahweh's ketubah. So for me to go do this and say, okay, let me see. There's these various different overlords, there's these various different authorities, there's these various different Christ figures and so-called messiahs, and then there's Yahweh. Let's see, I'm going to listen. I choose Yahweh. So for somebody to say, well, why are you going back under the servitude of those laws? It's like, because I want to be this kaf. I want to be the one that this is all for. I want to be the one that gets the benefits of everything Yahweh said. And as I read these words, Yahweh said, hey, I've got all this stuff stored up that I promised Israel under the terms of the covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and I will give them to whoever wants them, but the terms are the same. The terms are the same. And if somebody else walks up and says, hey, we've got different terms, it's like, okay, fine. I want these terms. And if someone walks up and says, hey, Jesus, Paul, and George Washington, and Abraham Lincoln, and whoever else came up with a different covenant, and it's like, fine, you can have your covenant. But I want the covenant of Yod He Vav He. The word kaf chet, kach, is where we get the word for cocky, which is like a rooster, which means strength, power, force, vigor, potential. Like the Mishkan is another way to read that. What's in the Mishkan? Power, force, potential, vigor. The life. Chet yod is the word for life. If you add the letter yod at the end, where it says cocky, it's basically like my Mishkan, like my treasure chest. You want to be like my stuff? You want to be like me? Yahweh saying, do you want to be like I represented myself by everything in this Mishkan? Okay, regard my stuff. Regard my instructions. Regard my open hand. Here it is, plain letters. Kaf, kaf. Two kafs. Like you. But that's the word that means so or thus. It's very similar to the same word as kaf he and kaf nun. Kaf lamed, or kaf lamed he, or kaf lamed, which is very similar to kaf vav lamed and kaf yod lamed. Remember the yods and vavs, and if you double the letters, kaf lamed, it basically is the word all. It means whole, the complete of, including the entire total package. Kaf lamed aleph means to withhold, restrain, hybridize, crossbreed, and it means as if not. Imagine that. In Hebrew, this ancient word, kaf lamed aleph as a word means no. So here you have kaf lamed, means all. And if you add an aleph, you might say, well, aleph is the plan. So one way to read this is the whole plan. But the other way to read this is that the word lamed aleph means no. Not. Like no. I'm not going to do the whole thing. Well, that's the word for crossbreed and hybridize. You know what happens when you crossbreed and hybridize? They say, oh, you get stronger. You can get genetically modified plants and you'll get stronger strains. But it means as if not, and it also means loss. And so they're now, the scientists, thanks Monsanto, are making seedless food. Well, Yahweh says the food that you're supposed to eat, as he told to Adam, is everything that had seeds. So guess what they're doing? They're taking seeds away and saying it's better for you. But what it's doing is making it as if it's not food. And it's as if it will not give you the strength that he promised if you ate according to the standards that he ate, that he gave us to eat. The Kaf Lamed Vav Yod means confined or imprisoned. Kaf Lamed Hey means all of it. It's also the kalaz, the word for bridal canopy. It means finished, completed, accomplished, fulfilled. It also means destroyed and consumed. It's a word for mosquito netting. So how is a bridal canopy means all of it, but it also means destroyed. It's because when you come into the kingdom, what is destroyed? Your own prerogative to do everything he said. These words written right down here are what the people said in response to what the Ten Commandments were. They said, everything that Yahweh says, we will do. And later they says, and we will hear. That's the word Shema. And see here the word for do is Aleph, or Ayin Shin Hey. Noon is the lightning bolt that imparts action to Ayin Shin Hey. That word that I wrote up before that says work, do, complete, produce. You see, once you recognize these letters, you can start putting them together. And, you know, when I first started looking at this a couple of years ago, it's like this whole thing, like I said before, the modern Hebrew is like a swarm of ants. These bulbous things with string timed together. It's like, I couldn't make any sense. But now I can look at this and I know these words. And a couple of years ago, even a year ago, I was saying, I'm illiterate. I don't know these things. It's easy. You can read this stuff. Kaf Lamed Aleph, Kaf Lamed Vav Aleph, a bird cage, a prison, bars. The lines, they're bars. What bird cage? I want to be free. I want to be at liberty. Yahweh says, if you turn your back on my words of the Torah, oh, you're free. You're free to go outside, in which case you're not under my contractual obligation to cover you, and now your enemies have free pot shots at you. You're free. And I'm quoting words right out of the scripture, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah. It's all through the Tanakh, but you know, we weren't really taught to read the Tanakh because you have to read it in Hebrew. If you Yahweh's protection, you want his branding iron on you. I was about to say about the kuf earlier. Moses said, show me your glory, and Yahweh says, you can't see my face and live, but I'll show you my kuf view, my backside. What did he do? He said, I will put my kaf on you. I will put my kaf on you, and I will pass by, and I'll take it off, and you can see my kuf view. What's his kaf? Well, if you say, well, that's his hand. It's translated his hand. He'll put his hand on you. He'll put his kaf. I maintain that the kaf, right inside the kingdom, is the lines of instruction, which is the Torah. Yahweh will put his Torah on you, and you can see his kavod, his glory, as he passes by. You want to see Yahweh's glory as he passes by? Let him put his kaf on you. Let him wrap you up in his commandments, and you will see his kavod. This is the word kavod here, kaf bet dalet. The word bet dalet is the word for Adam being alone, and it means like no other. The letter kaf as a prefix means like, and bet dalet is unique, separate, no other. It's very similar to the word kadesh, which means separated like no other. Adam was alone, there was no other, it wasn't good, so he made his wife for him. Yahweh made his wife. It's the word kavod is literally, it means weight. It's the word for liver, which is the weighty organ, but it's the weight, it's the honor, it's the prestige, it's the regard. If you want to see Yahweh's kavod, let me see your great honor. He put his hand, his kaf, on Moshe, and it allowed him to see the kavod, which is the kuf view, which is like the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke, is a metaphorical picture type. And you might say, what does that have to do with anything? The Sabbath day and the festivals are Yahweh's covering. It's his expression of himself. If you want to see his kavod, keep his instructions. Regard his words. You'll see his kavod. Well, what do I get for doing that? You won't know until you do it. Kaf lamed, kal, means to maintain, feed, support. It's the word for a steward who's in charge of the warehouse of goods, of food. Why does all these words with kaf have to do with giving you instructions, calling you his own, and providing you with the provisions? Kaf lamed, complete, perfect, included. That means you're one of his. Was generalized as comprising, like the whole community. The sum total, common. Kaf lamed mem, to put to shame, reproach, insult, humiliate. Kalam, like calamity. Kaf lamed pei yod means towards or opposite. So it's like you can either be of him or contrary to him. You can, kaf lamed mem, the four letters in the middle of the menorah, it turns out to be yod, kaf, lamed, and mem. Kaf and lamed are the middle two. Yod is the 10th letter. Mem is the 13th letter. So these four are the four that represent the 22, right? The four in the middle. And you could say, well, yod, kaf, lamed, ikal literally means, read it up in the dictionary, it means to have the power, the capability, the capacity to prevail. If what? If he will do all of them. If you do all of them, you have the capacity to prevail. So you can sit here and you can pray for the anointing, or you can do what he said. And I'm not saying that the two are contrary, but to say that, well, let's just pray for the anointing and not do what he said. You see, if you take away the yod, which is the hand of work, and you look at kalam, it's where we get the word for calamity. If you don't do what he said, what kind of anointing are you asking for? Because he said, remember, he said he strengthened Pharaoh's neck, his heart. Pharaoh had a determination, and Yahweh says, I'll turn the heat up. He'll enforce what it is we choose to do. If we choose to keep his words, Yahweh will amplify it. If we choose to rebel against him, he might just amplify that to still show his kavod, because it's all about showing his kavod. He'll show his kavod in Pharaoh. He'll show his kavod in Moshe. Which side of the line do we want to be on? What are we going to line up with? If we line up with the Torah, Yahweh says it will to elevate you, enhance you, give you life, give you strength, give you wisdom. The word for submissive is kaf nun vav ayin. Do you understand that you can be submissive to Yahweh's ways? Do you see the play on words? Kaf nun vav ayin. Do you understand? Can be yoked to understanding. You understand that you can be submissive. The word is submissive. That you can submit to Yahweh's ways and prosper. The word knesset. Kaf, nun samek tav. Nun samek, that's the picture of the... By the way, these are available too. We got just got these printed up. They're peel and stick bumper stickers. You can stick them on a book or your refrigerator or something. The Nun Samek, we talked about that previously. Knesset is the place where you parley, where you talk, where you discuss. Parliament. The parliament. What was meant by the parleying? What did he mean when he said what he said? That's parliament, the place where you go. That's the Knesset in Hebrew, the place in the Jerusalem Assembly of Congress. Kaf Yod Pei means to force. Kaf Samek Lamed is the word for castle, which is plump and thick and fat, like this solid thing that somebody can't easily knock over, that you can run into. Kaf Nun Vav Tav, honesty. Kaf Nun Samek, to go in, gather, collect. It's where we get the word for cans. Kaf Nun Can Samek is an S sound, cans. What do you put in cans? The collection of your harvest. What comes into the Mishkan is Yahweh's collection of the harvest that he then catalogs and categorizes and puts like on racks, right, compartmentalized, according to what? According to tribes, according to attitudes, according to dispositions. If we come in, could it be that everything he said that he was going to do regarding us once we got into the kingdom was based on our personal disposition of how we regard his Torah instructions? That's what the letter Kaf looks to be like as you study the letter. And if you study where it's used, it's like, it's a free choice. Take yourself, Come into the kingdom, that's a decision. Put yourself on the spinning potter's wheel. He will form you according to the instructions. You ever bought a tool or an appliance, a new car, and there's a set of instructions? The kaf is the set of instructions by which Yahweh, his hand of the yod, is forming on the spinning potter's wheel tet to be of a useful design for his kingdom. Let's go to Isaiah and Jeremiah because we're starting to run out a little bit of time here. By the way, if you think you have an excuse why you shouldn't have to do this, the word for excuse is tav aleph nun, which is the same as fig tree, or tav vav aleph nun hey. It's an excuse, an opportunity, or an occasion for a quarrel. Well, there's a pretty good occasion for a quarrel. It's the same word for fig tree. Adam and Hua were told what to do, and they came up with a better idea. They realized they had sinned. Their eyes were opened or closed, or however you want to read that, and they put fig leaves on them. It's the same thing as the word for excuses. They found excuses to not do what he said, were shamed, and then tried to use an excuse as a way of what? Rationalizing? Hiding from him? It's like we could think of all kinds of excuses and point the finger at Adam and Eve, or it could simply say, let's just do what he said. Let's try to figure out what he said to do and do it. So if you look in the verse for Jeremiah 16:16, so this is fishing for soul. So again, on the website, fishing, the number 4, S-O-L-E, Sons of Living Elohim, which goes back to the last verse in Hosea 1, or it's actually the first verse in Hosea 2 if you look at the Jewish Tanakh. But if you look at Jeremiah 16:16, it says, Behold, I shall send many fishermen, Nam Yahweh. And the word Nam Yahweh, just for what it's worth, is used quite often in the scriptures, and if you don't know what it means, it's translated as the word of Yahweh, but here's it spelled here, Nam Yahweh, Nun Aleph Mem. Well, of course, the word Aleph Mem Nun is Amen, and this is Nun Aleph Mem, but Aleph Mem is like the mother or the metropolis or that which causes something to happen, and to Nun is to put a lightning bolt into it, so it's like plugging in the appliance where something is going to happen. It's translated as simply as word. Yahweh, and I found that he uses it a lot, and it's almost like he's rubber stamping it with his signature, Nam Yahweh, Nam Yahweh. So I put that here in the form of a rubber stamp to get the idea across that every time you see these words, Nam Yahweh, he's rubber stamping his identity. That's this is Ani Yahweh, which is very similar. This means I am Yahweh, and the other one is like, he's almost like a king, like the president of the country, signing a bill and sending it off, dispatching it to happen. That's like Nam Yahweh. So, Behold, I will send many fishermen, and they will fish them out. And afterwards I shall send many trappers, and they will trap them atop every mountain and every hill, and from the crevices in the rocks. Sounds like people are hiding, but what's going on with that? For my eyes are upon all their ways, and they are not hidden from before me, and their sin is not concealed before my eyes. I shall repay them first for the repetition of their sin and transgression. What is sin and transgression? Contradicting the kaf. Leviticus 26 says that's going to be 7 times the ways, like their ways, 7 times 2,730 years, according to Ezekiel 37. We've talked about that before. We calculate that if the 721 BC, Assyria came in and conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, that puts it at 2010. We're outside that envelope, so this should apply. Hey, we can come back, right? He says, I shall repay them first for the repetition of their sin and transgression, for having desecrated my land, and their disgusting abominations, and their detestations that have filled up my heritage. And then here's this phrase, Yahweh my strength, Yahweh my stronghold. Strength is the word ayin zayin hey, which is Azi. Stronghold is mem ayin zayin yod, which is, you might say Azi is just strong, but it's a place of strength, which would be stronghold. Azi mazi, my refuge on the day of distress. To you, nations will come from the ends of the earth and say, and we've said this quote many times, and here's where it's from. It's in Jeremiah 16. It was all falsehood that our ancestors inherited, futility that has no purpose. Can a man make Elohim for himself? They are not Elohim. Then Yahweh says this, Behold, therefore, I inform them at that time, could this be now? We'll get to this in a moment. I shall let them know of my hand and my strength, and they shall know that my name is Yahweh. I'm going to address a couple things here, but you have to see it in Hebrew. The word for futility is aleph pei somek, and it means null or not. We have inherited, that's the ends of the earth. Mem aleph pei somek. The ends of the earth, does that mean the end of the earth? Or does that mean when the earth has finally come to realize, hey, we got nothing. Everything's a big wash. Everything's wiped. It kind of looks like what's going on now. We have inherited futility that has no purpose. The word futility basically means there, it's an upper garment, like this shirt. It means treachery covering the higher section of what would have otherwise been useful. You see, the Shabbat was given to us to elevate us as something useful, but something was put over it, claiming a higher authority, covering the usefulness of the Shabbat. They called it Sunday, Christmas, Easter, Halloween, and it says, oh no, this is your strength. And it says right here in Jeremiah 16 that we will come to the point that says it was falsehood that our ancestors inherited. Futility that has no purpose, meaning it can do nothing for us. And when you come back to the terms of Yahweh's alphabet, Yahweh's words, you realize, oh, this thing is loaded with usefulness. And then it says, therefore, behold, I informed them at the time. And the words, I could write it on here, we're running out of time, we only have a couple minutes. It says, Lachan, Lamed Kaf Nun, which means truly, Hineni, Hey, Nun, Nun, Yod. This is the word that says, behold, here am I. Remember the letter Hey, and the Nun is like lightning bolts of action. And here's this word, Mem, Vav, Dalet, Yod, Ayin, Mem. And it means, listen to what it means. I won't write it up here because we don't have time. Sing, information, intelligence, memory, a mnemonic sign. It's a device to memorize with. Like mode, modulate, measure. It also, Mem, Vav, Dalet, Ayin means an acquaintance or a friend or something that you're familiar with. And then the word is Bet Pei Ayin Mem, which means impelled to move, excited, like a hammer striking an anvil or a beat of a drum. And then the words is, hey, Zion Aleph Tav, like, hey, it's the Zion of Aleph Tav. Hey, it's this. It's the Zion. It's the peak of its form of the Aleph Tav. It's the Mashiach lifted up. And then the word is Aleph Vav Dalet Yod Ayin Mem. It's the same word as Mem Vav Dalet Ayin Yod Mem, but it's an Aleph instead of a Mem. And this word means introduce a mechanism to make certain and easy to remember. An ode, which is a song, like a poem, extolling the remembrance of a great one. So here you have these two words that Yahweh says, Aleph Tav, Yod Dalet, Yod, Edi, like the word we had, it was my hand, which will be sufficient, which will give you a handle of strength. Ve Aleph Tav, Geborti. The word Geborti is strong one, mighty, valiant, heroic, warrior. It's a word in Arabic where you get Jabbar, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which means a mighty giant, a colossus. But this is that same word in Hebrew that means this is a colossus of a towering giant, Yada, which is to know, Ki, so thus, Shemi, my Shem, Yahweh. Well, what could possibly be? This is in Jeremiah 16. Yahweh says at a certain time, outside the envelope of the occasion that he was going to allow this curse to repay our ancestors for all the things they've done, forsaking the Kaf, the instructions, that he was going to bring them back, and the people would say these words, which was what we've been saying here, which is why I've been saying it week after week. It was all falsehood that our ancestors inherited, futility, there was no purpose. Can a man invent Elohim? Can a man invent strong things for himself, like Sunday, Christmas, and Easter? Can he invent that and declare it to be Elohim? No! What's Elohim? Only the things that Yahweh established, made, and blessed. He blessed, he Baruch, he baruched the Sabbath day. He baruched the festivals in Leviticus 23 that he said were his. And so he says, I will truly, behold, reveal myself in a intelligent mnemonic device like a song, where with a beat and a rhythm which impels you to move, revealing the Zion of Aleph Tav, the Mashiach, the strength of the set-apart instructions, revealing everything where it will give you a handle that's sufficient to elevate you to heroic gallantry, knowing my name, Yahweh. It sounds to me like the Aleph Bet song, which I think we should sing. Here, we're right near the end. There's a thing in Isaiah, real quick, which talks about the same thing, where he says, and this is what I'll get to. I'll do this and we'll sing the alphabet song real quick. He says, where is one who will count? He says, your heart will muse in dread. Where is one who will count? Where is one who will weigh? Where is one who will count the towers? This is Isaiah 33:17. It says, your eyes will behold the King in his splendor. You'll see him from a faraway land. But what it really says, if you read it in Hebrew, the word sefer is the word for count, which is what we're doing. The word for shekel is weigh, which is weighing and evaluating, comparing these things. And the word for where is one who will count the towers. The word tower is migdalim. And as we were saying in Jeremiah 31:31, it says, no more will any man need to say you should know Yahweh, for they will all know me, speaking of a future day. And they will, from the least of these to the greatest, and the word least is spelled kuf tet, like the little children, or like the cute little alphabet letters, until the gedolim. The ones would be the great ones. And I would maintain that recognizing these letters, recognizing these words, is the Gidolim, is the towers, revealing Yahweh's identity. So for us to learn these things is essentially fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah 33:17 and Jeremiah 16 through 21, where Yahweh is providing a mechanism to behold his face in learning these alphabetic letters and putting them to the little ditty of a song. Like Itsy Bitsy Spider, or this one that Rand Cheshire is working on. So here, right at the very end, why don't we go through and sing the song together, like we practiced a few weeks ago. It's been a few weeks. I wanted to get to this week before we could sing it again. You up for it? Yeah. Aleph is the plan that Abba purposed in his heart. Bet is the container of all he would impart. Gimel is the sent one to retrieve us home again. To enter through the door, the Dalet. Hey, look, he's the Vav, man. Cut off, perfect yet, the Zion, one of seven Nes. Selah. Think about it. Chet is for our safekeeping, sealed by Tet like a wedding ring. Yod his hand who made my hand to hold on to his Kaf, which is Torah, Torah, Torah. Our regard reveals the heart, Lameding, so that from Mem, a blessed noon restart. Samech Ayin Pei Shema Shomer, together one. Zadi stands alone, though all Israel shall become. After Kuf, our noble Resh, exalted in the sky. Sheen, our shining Elyon, Yahweh El Shaddai. The Aleph Tav, accomplished and completed as he said. The one word left untranslated, the one we all reject. Still the offer yet remains. Chaim ed ha'olam. For the simple Brit of love and death is Aleph Bet, his song, Hashir Shirim, the Song of Songs. One last word. This thing in Isaiah, it says, you will not see bold people, the people whose speech is too difficult to understand, of garbled tongue without comprehension. But there's a different way to translate that. And basically what it means is, audacious, fierce people cannot see this. See, the letter Kaf isn't in the word for you will not see, but it says the audacious, fierce, arrogant people cannot see this. But then here the word is ayin, mem, kuf, yod, and it means study deeply, profound depth, thinking like a deep valley, which is why I said deep, profound thinking will compensate, indemnify, cure of lunacy, restore to health. The meaning and the sense of significance that was lost as a delivery of judgment. The stammering tongue without understanding or intelligence. You see, I believe that going back and reading this Hebrew and teaching each other to learn is the fulfillment of these verses in Jeremiah and Isaiah. This is Jeremiah 31:33 and in Isaiah 33:17 and Jeremiah 16. It's like, I believe this is like a prophetic, astounding thing that Yahweh is doing, that we are coming back to regard his words. This is not some idle class of studying ancient Phoenician, a lost language of punk idiots who blew off the covenant that used to be called ancient Israel. This is the coming back to the restoration of the only great thing on the planet, Yahweh's self.